When I first got into this relationship, I was like, where's all the drama? This is boring. When you're in a relationship, the other person often is mirroring something back to you that needs to be addressed.
So not only are we going to be reliving some of our past traumas in a different light because we're progressing as well, but guess what? We're going to also be inundated, potentially, with new stuff.
Well, hello there, and welcome to this episode of the Terri Cole Show. I'm happy you're here. I have one of my pals back on the show. Her name is Gabrielle Stone, and we are talking about love and a book that she wrote with her partner, Taymor Ghazi, and it's called Finding You Through Finding Me. And you guys probably know Gabrielle. She's the best-selling author behind the viral phenomenon Eat, Pray, FML, which stands for My Life, all about, she basically wrote this heartbreak Bible that sparked this global community around her. She was married, her husband was having an affair with the babysitter, it was a whole thing. And then she wrote a second book, and then she met who is her partner now, and they have collectively written this book together. And it's really their story of love, but what they've learned along the way. They first crossed paths as actors so Taymor is an actor, director, and a producer who I knew him from a million television shows, guest starring on Special Victims Unit and a bunch of other stuff, film and television. But when I saw that they got together, I was like, oh, that's amazing. And then when she told me they wrote a book together, and that book is right here, Finding You Through Finding Me. And it is a raw and beautiful book about love and about healing and about hope. And I feel like this is a perfect time in our lives for a book. It's a very compelling book about love, healing, and hope. So whether you're single or partnered, whether you're happily single, it doesn't matter. This is really a book about you. I hope that you enjoy this interview with Tay and Gabs as much as I enjoyed interviewing them. Well, hello. I'm super excited to welcome my guest today to the Terri Cole Show. I have a double guest today. We have Gabs and Tay, as it says on their Riverside names, which I love. So welcome to the show, you guys.
Yay, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be back. And this is actually our first dual podcast.
Yeah, doing it
We're
up.
popping our cherry with you, Terri Cole.
I'll be gentle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so exciting things. I was saying right before we went live, you guys made a human and then you made a book. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about all the things. I love this book so much. I want to hear about the motivation for the book, but how are you doing? Because it's a lot to make a human and then write a book. Yes. So tell me how you guys are doing.
We are very mentally unwell. No, I'm just kidding.
Hanging on.
No, it's been a journey, as creating anything is. But definitely creating a human has been the wildest ride of my life thus far. And in true Gabs and Tay fashion, when I was 8 months pregnant, we went to have coffee and I was like, we should write a book. Mm-hmm. And we started it when I was 9 months pregnant, was writing a lot of it with a sleeping newborn on our chests. And we just really deeply felt that the idea of looking at the different traumas and experiences and life events that we each went through individually and how we healed from those in order to find a healthy, not codependent relationship was a really important message. And if we could do that in an entertaining way, it felt like a really great service to my readers who have now come to love Tay as well.
Yeah.
So Tay, tell me from your perspective, how is this? Because I know you have a whole life and you're an actor and I've seen you a million times and you have a public life, but this is kind of different. So how is it being the center of a book and now you guys collaborating on this book, but how is it for you from that perspective?
Well, I mean, to add author to my repertoire was massive to start. It was also daunting, and I've always been somewhat of a writer, but to actually I've written scripts and stuff like that, not sat down and actually write portions of my life. It was daunting. I felt a great responsibility. I also had fear surrounding it with my children reading parts of my life that maybe I wouldn't want them to. Uh, I wouldn't want to just volunteer that information out. Although I've processed that as well. So it was a little bit daunting. To circle back to what Gabs was saying is, you know, we probably didn't pick the best time to write the book. It was extremely difficult for us to find the time to write. Gabs, the way she writes is very flowy and it just kind of like streams out. It takes me a while. I had to like start waking up at like 4 in the morning to find the couple of hours that I could just really like not bothered by our baby, but bothered by life. Because when you're writing about it, you can't be you can't have other life things interfere with you. So in that sense, it was daunting, but we got through it.
Oh, you did beautifully.
Thank you.
What's interesting though about getting into starting to really write in this way, I love that insight, Tay, because it's so true. That at least for me, the way that I write is very much in chunks. And like, I'm not someone, I can't be like writing throughout the day while
Right.
I'm then changing the laundry. And I really need like concentrated time where I do it in 45-minute chunks where I'm not doing anything else. And I just have my timer on, but everything else is off. So you can just work. That it's interesting. The idea of wanting to write a book, if you haven't, you have one, at least for me, I had an idea before I wrote my first book in 2020. I was like, oh, I think it's going to be like this. And then it was, holy shit, nothing like that.
Right.
Like, I had a romantic notion of drinking cocoa and writing my book, and that was not how it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, not for us either.
It never does. It is so romantic to think that, or like you see it in movies and they're like going to a cabin and, they've got their pipe and their cup of coffee. And it's like, no.
Well, to be fair, my first and second book, that was the vibe.
Right.
And then, children
That's true.
changed that.
Yeah, it's kind of like you sink or swim. You just have to write when you can or you have to carve out the time, like 4 o'clock in the morning, which then it actually eventually kind of like
Turned
came.
into your cup of coffee.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So what inspired, right? Because this is about your individual healing journeys and then sort of your collective healing journey. So talk a little bit about, I mean, Gabrielle, I know that you've kind of been on this journey for years because we've all been on this journey with you for years, this healing journey. But what about you, Tay? What was your, before there was Gabs and Tay, what was your relationship to your own self-reflection, evolution, whatever you would want to call it?
Wonderful question. To be honest, the best answer I could come up with is discovery. I was constantly discovering new parts about me that needed either fixing or addressing. And so that has always been, as you will read in the book and you can see, there's always been some kind of discovery for self-care and self-love. I just haven't been able to pinpoint it. Through the writing of the book, which was interesting for me, I readdressed some of the things that have been kind of long, not forgotten, but in the past. I think the best way to answer that is take it, from Gabs's perspective of how I wanted to, reading her books taught me how to kind of address my own self-love. I think that's the best way to put it. I actually started to like do my own little, the cocktails and the onions and all of her things. And I think that is the best way is once I started reading her books, it even furthered my notion of kind of my own self-care.
And I thought it was really important for this audience that I've built of, I do have my men in my audience, but it's predominantly women. And so many of them have relationships and partners or men in their life, brothers, fathers, who desperately need something that doesn't feel like self-help that they can relate to and get healing through. And I knew that if I brought a male perspective into my work, it would allow that door to open up in a really comfortable and safe way. So our hope was not only for all of my readers to get healing out of this and to go on this journey with us and, you know, laugh and have fun and get to know us better, but for them to be able to give this book to any of the men in their life that maybe have had a harder time opening up or being vulnerable or doing the work. Because I think the way that Tay and I both write, it's not self-help, like let us teach you
Right.
these things. It's this is what we've messed up on and learned and gathered and grown. So take it or leave it and, you know, hear the story along the way.
I mean, there was
Yes,
also
I love this.
there was also some
Oh, go ahead.
therapy as we were writing too. I mean, I don't think I set out to be like I just want to touch one person's heart. I think I was like actually therapeutically going through my own life while writing it. So there was some of that going on as well. I mean, I was still in the process of the cocktail, the self-love cocktail while writing. Please,
Right.
sorry.
It's interesting though how you have, you know, your audience, Gabs, and I do think that it's sort of bringing Tay in is this very safe invitation for women to talk to their partners because you're like modeling something, and because you're appear to be, I don't know you well enough to say this, but like the appearance is like kind of alpha male guy is what you look like. Okay,
Which is so
I'm
funny
not saying
because
that's who
here's
you
the
are.
alpha. Just kidding.
Of the real. No, you're
Not
not.
really.
No, you're not.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where I feel like it really does open the door, because I think that there still is a stigma for a lot of men. And the way that you guys teach and the way that you talk and doing it through stories, doing it through sharing your experiences, I feel like is a really effective way to let other people, I don't know. I love somebody teaching me like, show me, don't tell me,
Yeah.
right? You're showing me with what you experienced. So for, let's say for you, Tay, what was one of the highlights, or one of the highlights, the healing highlights for you that allowed you to be in this kind of a relationship with Gabs?
Oh, I mean, literally every chapter. To be honest, it was if I'm answering the question correctly, it was all of these chapters, all of these, for the lack of a better term, chapters in our life, all needed some type of addressing or some type of a little more acknowledgement. And I think that's was that when I said there was kind of some therapy happening while I was writing, that's what I mean. I mean, every single chapter needed to happen in my life for me to get to the point to accept and to appreciate the love of somebody else. I think, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that that was really like the through line that we wanted to convey, because I have single readers, I have readers that are in happy relationships, and I have readers who are in relationships that need a lot of work, that they are kind of 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And it really was like our roadmap of this is all the things we had to go through and the lessons we had to learn from those things in order to attract the healthy relationship, in order to feel safe in the healthy relationship, in order not to sabotage the healthy relationship, or in order to just simply find ourselves if you're not looking for a relationship whatsoever. And that was a really important thing we wanted to address as well, because the relationships aren't the end all be all. It's you that's the end
Yeah.
all be all. You have to be good with yourself and happy with yourself and have a full life before you can add someone to that.
And not looking for someone, you know, this whole thing about self-love and self-consideration is an inside job. And it's like when we're trying to delegate it somewhere else, you know, Wayne Dyer many years ago before he passed had said to me something like, when you do that, yes, someone can bestow it upon you, but then they can also take it away. And so there's no stability if your sense of self, of course, is coming from the outside. And we know this as people get divorced and people cheat with babysitters and shit happens in life where you know, it has to be getting high in your own supplies, so to speak, before you have something to bring to a relationship. But I wonder, you know, Gabrielle, I know that with your life, you know, I was going back over because you've been on the show before and your other books, and you have had a lot of trauma in your life. That's
Just
not
a
news
bit.
to you,
Just
obviously.
a bit.
Just a teeny.
Teensy bit.
I mean, so effing dramatic, from finding your father dead to all the things, to your high school boyfriend dying tragically. Like, there was many things along the way. And I wondered, Tay, do you have a similar, because I didn't know your background as well, do you have a similar sort of traumatic background experience?
Very much so. As a matter of fact, that's one of our through lines in our relationship, is that we both have found our respective parent dead on the floor, for the lack
an
of a better
oddly
term.
specific trauma, which
Very
is
specific.
which is why that first chapter, loss of a parent, is so important, because it mirrors what we went through, which set us up for so many obstacles and healing journeys in our life with abandonment. So this is the first relationship that I've had that someone understands that fear of abandonment that I have so well, because he experienced it with his mother and I experienced it with my father and then my high school sweetheart. And each of our experiences with finding our respective parent were very different, but that life event at such a young age really set us out on a specific trajectory. And it was, I mean, some would call it wild, some would call it obvious and fate that we ended up intersecting, and being able to help heal that fear within each other.
Well, and also just cradle the other person's abandonment issue. I hate to use the term issue. Yes, we did share that same initial traumatic experience. However, our kind of the umbrella of abandonment was over both of us, but they kind of manifested in different avenues. Like, mine went down one avenue, she went down a different, and but when we came together, as she said, it was very healing and also right. There was something unspoken about how just right it was. And I think through writing the book, we kind of figured out, we figured out well before that we have this kind of intricate bond that is vastly different than other kind of bonds.
I always imagine it like for every cracked pot, there is a perfectly cracked lid.
I love that analogy.
Like, you're the pot and you're the lid, and you, like what Tay just said just really resonated with me about the rightness of when you find yourself in listen, there's many relationships that are right? We have different experiences, relationships are for different things, but when it's something that's going to be a long-term thing. And with my husband, we've been together almost 30 years. And before him, I never wanted to get married. I was not interested. But exactly what you said, Tay, about that sense of this weird calm that I had never experienced before, where from the outside, he was widowed and divorced. He had 3 teenage sons. Like, it did not look right to anyone else.
Right.
But this sense of like, wow, there's literally nowhere else I'd rather be on earth right now. And that was 30 years ago, and I still feel the same way. So I know what you mean about when it hits in your bones, that rightness of like, no one else is going to understand this shit, but I don't care.
And Terri, I so resonate with that. I wrote in my second book, when I met Tay, like, he came wrapped completely wrong for me. I was like, what do you mean he's 15 years older than me and he has a child? That's not where I'm going. And it oftentimes when we're manifesting things, people, and whatever it is into your life, like, they are delivered in what you need, not what you're picturing in your head.
Which is a lesson, therein lies a lesson, because everybody is so quick to judge and so quick to be like, nope, I'm out, see ya. And it's like, I'm not saying hang out just for the sake, but don't be so quick to move past something that isn't like perfect on paper.
And a lot of times
So
what we
good.
wrote about in the triggers chapter, when you're in a relationship, the other person often is mirroring something back to you that needs to be addressed. And it's so important to learn what that looks like and know how to navigate it, because if you don't, it's a reason to bolt from what could be a really amazing
Yeah.
healing opportunity and a really amazing relationship.
Yeah.
And so that chapter was really important to us to illustrate our own triggers and what we've gone through together and how we've been able to grow from that. Because when I first got into this relationship, I was like, well, where's all the drama? This is boring. Because my definition of love from my ex-husband, from the man that love bombed me after that, was so toxic. So when I got with Tay, I was like, wait, this doesn't feel right. This must not be love. This is too
Yeah.
safe and quiet. And, then when you reset your nervous system and allow yourself to relearn what safe, healthy love feels like, you're like, oh, I just want to be bored and watch Netflix and order food and not have to like do the dramatics. It's such a relief.
Yes. It's interesting. Therapy clients will say, when they're healing and I can see it starting to integrate, they'll be like, I don't know. I mean, they're not my regular type. And I'd always be like,
Ding, ding,
ding,
ding.
ding, ding. Maybe we should go on date number 2
Yes.
for not your regular type
Right.
of
Yes.
psycho.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, this is good.
Biggest green
So
flag
in
if
the
they're
book
not your
itself,
regular type.
Yeah.
yeah, thank you. Exactly. In the book, you guys talk a lot about self-abandonment. So for each of you, what did that look like before your relationship? So in what ways were you sort of self-abandoning in other relationships?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. For me, I was self-abandoning in my choice in men, and that was a subconscious fear of abandonment. So my brain was attracting men that were going to abandon me, so I could say, see, I'm right, we're safe, I know what's going on. We have a chapter about addiction where I write about my eating disorder that I struggled with for many years, and my relationship with bulimia. And that is 100% a way that I was self-abandoning, which is ironic because it all stemmed from the need of control. And really the healing that took place in getting out of that and feeling safe in my body and good in my body before I went on this journey of motherhood was so direly important for me.
Yeah. Amazing. What about you, Tay?
Yeah, I think she pretty much nailed it with the addiction chapter. It's very difficult to think of any other thing than that for self-abandonment. For me, that period of my life, or those few periods of my life, were very challenging, of course, but also looking back, I was running from all of my own problems and myself. So, I mean, it was literal self-abandonment. I was like jumping my own ship, because, and then it just kept on going and going. I would have to say that, but also in writing the book, I came across more current self-abandonment issues, like the triggers. Oh, you said triggers too. Yeah, the triggers chapter. Just finding that some of the things I discussed in that are very not in my past, very right here, and still 51 years later, kind of processing and learning, and like trial and error all the time, and really trying to so I think I'm trying to stop abandoning with the triggers chapter. I'm trying to figure that out.
I love that because I feel like from a therapeutic point of view, first of all, I think that it's very honest and true that no matter how healthy you become, I've been a therapist for almost 30 years, and it doesn't mean we don't have things that will activate old wounds, even when you've done all the work in the fucking world, right? There'll always be, if I have a father wound, I'll always have a sensitivity to certain things because of having that particular wound. So I love the idea of learning each other's triggers and understanding what are the activation points, what are our abandonment fears. And obviously you guys have been through that and you talk about that, but I think that it's something that as people who are going to be reading this book, listening to this conversation, it's such an important factor that people don't talk about very much, which is understanding and having compassion for your own activation points. Because I think, we say triggers, they are triggers, but a lot of times I say activation because trigger makes it sound like it's all got to be big T trauma, which it doesn't necessarily, right?
Yeah, I love that phrase. And we actually, after our first pass of doing this book, went through some experiences in real time and went back and added a chapter called Losing Your Way, because I think it's so, what you said, important to be transparent. There's never going to be a therapist, a coach, a teacher who has it all together and doesn't falter. And I think it's really important with this world of social media where everyone's posting their highlight reels and everything's fucking like sunshine and rainbows. And that's not life. There are things that happen that are hard to deal with. There are things that, knock us off our center. And it's about how we get back to that center and come out the other side of it. So we went back and wrote that chapter, which I felt was probably the most vulnerable and honest. And my editor came back and was like, wow, I'm really glad you went back to do this because it makes you guys really human. And I think that's always what I've strived to do in my work, in my presence online. It's really important to me to let people know that it's okay to not be okay.
Interestingly, I want to kind of comment on what both of you said. As we get older, one of the more important things is also just the acknowledgement, right? Just the acknowledgement that we are ever changing. So not only are we going to be reliving some of our past traumas in a different light because we're progressing as well, but guess what? We're going to also be inundated potentially with new stuff, with new problems or issues or traumas that in 10 years we're going to look back and be like, whoa, that was traumatic. So it's the acknowledgement that is not going to stop no matter what. Nobody's going to self-love cocktail themselves in a Buddha in a lotus position,
But I'm gonna try.
elevated, like levitating over. It's not happening. So acknowledge the fact that with our growth, there's going to be other traumas, and how do we learn from those, and how do we approach those, even if they're totally different and totally not related to abandonment or addiction or whatever. So I think it's an acknowledgement as we get older.
Yes, and I think that the whole thing about looking for evidence, like part of what, even just writing this book, right? You guys are sharing evidence of your resiliency, like evidence of what it looks like to go through shit and come out the other side. What are the techniques? What are the things that you've done? What helped you? What supported you? How do you support each other in this process? Right. I love the idea with therapy clients. Well, I'll always say, if someone's feeling like, oh, I'm in this situation, I don't think I can handle it, I'll have people make brag books, or we'll look back on, oh, remember when you did this? We need to look at the evidence of our strength, because what Tay is saying is so true, that we will continuously be in these situations. I was having a conversation the other day about being a person who loves a lot of people. What does it mean in my life? Because I have a lot of close friends, and I have sisters, and I've got a million nieces and nephews, and I love hard, But it means that you feel a lot of things. When something bad happens to those people, if you love 2,500 people, deeply, at any given moment, you'll be affected by that. And I feel like it's important to know how to protect yourself in relationships. So I had a question about, for people listening to this who have a tendency to sort of lose themselves in love, right? How you just, when you're young, you just get into a relationship, you ditch all your friends, whatever. And for some, that never changes. But with your experiences, what's one self-check thing that people can do to stay anchored in their own experience, or how are you doing it? Because you have a collective identity and your own identities.
Well, I mean, it's funny that you say that because I was very much like that. I was very much like to all of my best friends. I wouldn't abandon my best friends per se, but I was so like, oh my gosh, guys, this is the one. I'm in love. There's going to be nobody else other than this one. Like, she's the one. It became an ongoing joke that all my friends would just be like, oh my God, here he comes again. Yeah, let me guess, Tay, this is the one. So I think that I don't know how that, like, I don't even know how to explain how that kind of just
Well,
left.
I think it really shifted when he and I got in a relationship because he felt all of that as the pattern
Yeah.
went for me. And I was 1 foot in and 1 foot out, and really had a lot of my own healing to do before I was able to commit to him. And we have a chapter in the book that's our relationship journey. And I think for a lot of time, I carried a lot of guilt because I was the one that was, okay, yes, okay, I want to break up. Okay, yes, okay, I want to break up. And that, come to, full circle, was his trigger of people being 1 foot in and 1 foot out, and the abandonment. And me leaving all of those times gave him the opportunity to not only heal part of the abandonment wound, but also really genuinely feel okay by himself and not be looking for someone to fill that void
Right.
that the death of his mom left. And that journey that he ended up going on because of my in and out really made him more complete as a person. And then when I was ready to be both feet in, we had both done an extra step in that process that allowed us to be anchored in ourselves before we lost each other together. Was that right?
That was eloquence personified, if you ask me. Jeez,
Thank you.
that was gorgeous.
Perfect. I love it. All right, I have one last question for you guys. What do you hope that readers of this beautiful book, you guys, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the cover here, Finding You Through Finding Me. You see it. It's very beautiful. What do you hope that readers take away when they read the last page? Like, when it's done, what do you hope that readers are taking away from this book?
Well, personally, for me, like I had just, I'll circle back to that acknowledgement. Really, if I do end up touching one person, that responsibility of like kind of helping somebody or guiding another couple or another man reading this going like, oh, I may have some of those same issues or some of that same thing, and maybe I'll try therapy. Like, even just I'll try therapy. Done. Like, I can
Yep.
walk away with a big fat smile. So
Yeah.
that, I think, like that, and the acknowledgement, like I said, of, look, we're getting older. Like, it's not gonna end. So don't continue putting things under the rug. Like, just fucking deal with them
Yeah.
one by one, face, like, head on, and just get them done. And it takes work,
Yep.
but that's what I would like people to get out of this.
I think for me, I just hope that people leave a little better than we found them. So, whatever that means to them, if they needed to have a good cry and they did that reading one of our stories, if they feel like they can have a brave conversation they've been running from with someone in their life, whether that's a family member or a friendship or a partner, just leaving people with something they didn't have before they came is my hope.
Yeah.
I love it. You guys, where can everyone find everything? This book is out already. It's like where all fine books are sold.
It
People
is.
can get it. Is that accurate?
So you can get it on Amazon if you just type in Finding You Through Finding Me, because we did in fact self-publish this. As I did my first two books, we kept with the tradition. And you could also get signed copies. They come signed by both of us on my website, which is eatprayfml.com, where you can also find my first two books. But everything's on Amazon.
Great. You guys, thank you so much for spending so much time with us today. I really appreciate this, and I really feel like this is a love offering and an offering of hope during a time when we could really use some hope. So you guys watching, listening, whether you're in a relationship or not, if you could use a little hope, if you want to learn something, go get this book right now. And thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you so
Amen,
much, Terri.
Thank you for having us. We love you.
Have a wonderful day.